Hello everyone. Welcome back to another installment of Art and Archetypes. Today's archetype was really, I don't want to use the word hard, but it was difficult to research because I have, I have a lot of shadows surrounding this archetype, and it's the archetype of the caregiver. Now, I was taken care of, I would say, fairly well, in terms of childhood, growing up. But there were multiple people in my life who took the caregiver mentality, I guess you could say, to heart. And I know that when you separate the archetypes, this is the last of the archetypes, first three being the ones we've already gone over in the series so far, are archetypes of the ego type, which basically means that these archetypes, like the caregiver and the hero and the orphan, they're all like driven by the ego, right? So therefore, of course, there should, probably would be some shadow involved in that. Because the ego is on the surface, right? It's the shell in which the soul lives and things like that, in my opinion. In my limited capacity to understand these types of things. And I find it fascinating that when researching the caregiver, it rarely talks about the shadow. It doesn't talk about the shadow of hardly any of these archetypes. So I find it extremely hard to dive with these archetypes, and there not being anything to pin them to, except the niceties, And for me, it's hard because I want there to be some sort of balance, And if there's not balance, then I kind of feel out of whack. And so therefore, of course, looking at all the niceties, like the motto of the caregiver, the protect and serve, the mentality to protect and serve the people that you care for. Those are all nice things. Those are all admirable qualities. It's just, I know that there are shadows involved, and that there could be shadows involved, and that there have been for me. I'm using this wallpaper. I'm using this wallpaper paper here because it reminds me of this wallpaper that I had on the walls of the shack growing up. And so it kind of links me back to my own mother. Now, I don't want to get too roped into talking about my mother, okay? But she is the epitome of the caregiver. She has this knack for nurturing folks. She has this, it's like she can read people. I mean, I guess that's a good way to describe it. She has this read on people when they need her assistance. And that is a lovely thing that she possesses. But when there's nothing for her to nurture, there's an emptiness. There's a solemn. There's a deep depression with that. Almost like empty nest syndrome. It goes way beyond that. It goes to something that I don't even know if I could describe. There's a fierce protectedness, but then that's also led to some sheltered situations where I wasn't allowed, my siblings and I weren't allowed to do certain things and things like that. And so I guess you could say that those are those moments where I feel the caregiver dives kind of into shadow, is not knowing when to stop nurturing. I'm writing the title here. As you know me, I like to have the title of the archetype pretty out in the open. Whoops, this is not supposed to be giving. I wonder if that's a Freudian slip that I just did. Even though it's in writing and not saying it. page. I need to put that like right there. Maybe. I don't know. So like I said, the motto of the caregiver is love thy neighbor as yourself. And that makes me think of like the commandment, love thy neighbor, but don't covet his wife. I don't mean to laugh because that's a really good, think of the commandments, you think of them as like rules you cannot break or else, right? That was very much high in my life, is this or else kind of thing that was, roped into all the rules. But I think that is beautiful. I think that within this motto of the caregiver, this let's protect and care for one another, I think that there's also you can get a lot of backlash for that, especially what if the caregiver is living a gender that wouldn't be acceptable, that caring for others isn't acceptable. It's kind of looked down upon. Oh, let me move these fingers down. Right? And I feel bad. I was like, they want to help. They want to care for others, but maybe that's looked down upon. That fills me with so much sadness. I'm using hot glue today, and I don't want it to like warp too bad, but we'll get to that. Well, guys, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. I'm using these hands here. I'm going to actually get some school glue here. I really have been inspired, before we get to the archetype really anymore, I wanted to say that I've been extremely inspired lately by an art journalist here on YouTube. They have a pretty good following, but I don't know, it just happened to be in my feed one day, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm really, really interested in this. Plus, I've, of course, been looking at art journaling lately because of this project that I've been doing with the archetype. So this, YouTuber came up, and I think that their name is Berber von Gorp. I'm going to leave their channel link below so you can go check them out, because, what they do with their journals is just hypnotizing. They do this like ASMR thing where you can hear every like cut of paper and smooth of a paintbrush. It's just mesmerizing. I don't know. I've just transfixed, like hypnotized. So it's been really cool to watch them work, I guess. And they do all these cool things like with the rips, and I don't know, I've just been extremely inspired. So I'm going to take a page out of their book for a little bit. I want this to kind of be under the fingers, but it should have done it before. Whatever. Yeah, I'll glue that down. So I've just been thinking about, because the good, it's so easy for everyone to think of all the good, right, in something, whatever it may be. It's so easy to think about the good. You really don't want to think about the bad. But that's not true for me. When I think of anything, I like to think of its opposite, whatever that may be. And it doesn't have to be negative, okay? It just its opposite. I just have this thing about duality. It has actually become a problem for me in the last couple of years, because I've gotten to where some things I just can't do without there being an opposite. It's become like almost like an obsession, so I have to take heed into some of those things. Let's see if I need to put some glue right here. Gosh, don't you just love school glue? I just love it. I love the feel on my hands. I used to have to buy like these jars of it for my kids to put it on their hands and then let it dry, and then just like you would spend hours just peeling it off their hands. I loved it. As long as they didn't touch their hair. So, I want to write the motto here. I'm getting all kinds of fuzzies on here. I want to write the motto of the caregiver in between these two hands. Now, I think I had mentioned the hands before. I got them out of a magazine because I love cutting stuff out of the magazine. But there's something about hands for me that speak to caring about someone. Like, I've always loved hands. My brother has these hands that are like almost full of tattoos, right? And I have this picture of like his elbows on his knees and his hands are just kind of like limp right there in front of him. But there's so much art in the tattoos and things. It's just, I don't know, I love looking at hands, and I love looking at elder people's hands, like all the things that they've done with their hands. I just think that all the things they've done, like the stories that the hands could tell. Now, according to the website that I use mainly for my research in these archetypes, put this as the motto: love your neighbors as yourself. And I thought, really? I found that really hard to, I don't know, I guess wade through, because to be honest, I know plenty of people that care for others, but they don't know anything about caring for themselves. I mean, really. So I don't know, it makes me sad to think that there's some people out there that they do love people. They love people and they love caring for people. Like my mother, for instance. But then when it comes to themselves, or getting enough sleep, or, you know, have you had lunch today? Things like that. You have to kind of like talk them into it. Talk them into caring for themselves, because they're so not thinking about themselves. They're thinking about somebody else. They're constantly thinking about ways in which they can, you know, do better by the world. And they're on the very bottom of that list in their minds. And I find that sad as well. I've never had a problem with taking and demanding what I need. If that's, even when I had small children and I just needed a minute, I never had qualms to just be like, listen, I need a break. I'm sorry, but can you please help me? And, you know, some of the times I didn't get any help. Sometimes I didn't have anybody to ask. But I never had a problem asking for it, is my point. And so I kind of find the notion of not caring for yourself confusing, only because that's not who I am. I've never been one of those types of people. So I don't necessarily understand. But then I kind of talk to people like the caregivers in my own life and think, well, how can I get you to care about you better? You know, what do you need me to do so that you can take care of yourself? You need help with this, caring for this person. I used to go around, like when we used to go around and visit the elderly, I used to like do, you know, carrying the stuff for the other people in the group. And I would always say, you know, what do you need help with so that you can like sit down for a second? Especially my grandmother figure. I always felt so bad for her because she was always caring for everybody. And then by the end of the day, she would be so exhausted, you know? And I felt so bad. So I think there's a selflessness in the caregiver. But can you really care for others without taking care of yourself, without taking that time for you? What is the benefit of taking care of everyone if at the end of the day you haven't done anything for you? If you haven't taken 5 minutes to catch your breath, you know, things like that. Ooh, that fit really nicely in there. Compassionate. Anyway, so I've just been really thinking about, I know I feel like I'm all over the place right now, but I feel like as this is an ego archetype, does the need drive you to care for others? And is the need so great to care for others on the surface that you've neglected somehow yourself? How can you be selfless without a self, right? So I've been finding it really hard to kind of navigate this and to say, okay, well, let me scrunch up some paper. To protect, right? Think about the people that are sworn to protect you, or that are supposed to protect you, like in terms of like parents and whatnot, or the people who have vowed to protect you somehow, like a spiritual mentor, you know, stuff like that. Do they do this out of selflessness, right? Are they taking care of themselves when they say, oh, how can I help you today? Well, how have you helped yourself today? I just think that there needs to be a balance with this archetype. Now, like I said, this love your neighbors as yourself. Well, what about the people that are such good caregivers, right? They have no clue how to love themselves, right? What if they don't love themselves? What if they don't know how? And two, I've often thought about like my mother's situation. I thought about the fact that, you know, she is such a huge, I'm going to cut this before I glue it. Is she like this because she may have not been taking care of herself? She may have not had a caregiver to look up to, right? Was that the case? I don't want that to be the case, but it might have been, right? Can you care for others without loving and caring for yourself? That's the question I'm posing. I find when I look at this picture, I see these hands and I kind of think of a hug, right? I kind of think of you somehow being this caregiver archetype, being the glue that holds something together, holds a family together. Say it's the matriarch, holds relationships together. But that could lead to, again, that could lead to shadow stuff. It could lead to you settling in that toxic relationship because you have somehow roped your mind and the mind is warped into feeling like you have to care for this person, like that you have to be the caregiver to this other person. And therefore you can't leave because you would be devastated that they're no longer somehow getting cared for, right? That they would somehow be orphaned. And you as the caregiver / parent wouldn't be able to process that, wouldn't be able to like leave that person behind. So I do believe that those are, when you explore these archetypes, I think that I like to look at, of course, characters in books and movies that may have had this, but I try to look at people in my own life too. And when I see these caregivers in my mind and I share, you know, these memories, it dawns on me sometimes that these people are caregivers because of what they endured in their own childhood, the carelessness, the chaos when they needed order, right? And it's all about judging someone's needs in every situation because they're all different. And I would just like to know that people are thinking about that. When you do something for someone, is it on condition, right? I've been having a really hard time with that conditional love aspect because I've been dealt with a couple of times recently in this 2021 year where it felt some things, some situations felt conditional. And that didn't make me feel very good. I was thinking, wait a minute, you're supposed to love me no matter what. What happened? You know, what did I do to make your love less? And that's not fair to me. That's not me taking care of myself, right? Is the having those thoughts, is not dealing with that shadow. So then I have to look at that. I have to explore that. But if there's people out there that aren't exploring that aren't exploring the shadows, they're not exploring the fact that they weren't cared for, so therefore they're smothering in their own nurturement, they're going further down into their own pit of darkness. And they're almost using this ego archetype of the caregiver to somehow wear the armor of a hero, almost like martyrdom. And is that what's happening? Not in all cases, because I think the caregiver is so beautiful, but I think knowing yourself in certain situations is so important, because if you're taking care of yourself and you're loving yourself, most importantly, because you can care for yourself and not give a damn, you know? I mean, to an extent, I guess you have to love some of yourself to care for it, okay? Otherwise, you wouldn't brush your hair. But if you did all those things for yourself, then you would know when you were faced with certain situations or conversations with someone that you are supposedly caring for, not necessarily care about, but care for in a caregiver way. When does it turn sour? When would it turn sour? When it becomes codependency, right? Or when it becomes some sort of symbiotic relationship where neither one of you can get out of the cycles of caregiving and then this nurturement, this parent versus child like mentality, even if you're two grown adults, right? So I don't know. I've just been thinking about it all lately. Now I want to, of course, put a quote here. I don't know if I have enough paper scraps. I like this look of I always like the look of the ransom note look. I don't know. Maybe that's my twisted mind. I don't know. Okay, this really should be enough now. Okay. I think I'm going to write them down first. Let's see. I've got all these pieces of scrap paper. It's actually just this wallpaper stuff. I'm going to write down the quote. Let's see. You have two hands. Oh, see, messed up already. Hands. I love that Moen commercial, like that sink commercial. It's like where they're singing that Italian song. Your hands can brush your teeth and comb your hair. Throw a ball into the air. Wave hello or wave goodbye. Even make a pizza pie. 1, 4, 5. Yourself. for helping. There we go. Others. Ooh, my handwriting. Ooh, Lord. All right, now put it all together. Sometimes hot glue is just hot. I need like a pair of tweezers to like be able to pick all this stuff up and move it without it hurting me. And this piece of incorrect grammar is going to oh, that was gonna bug me. I love looking up quotes. I have a few quote dictionaries that I love. Like, I mean, of course, if you're familiar with me at all, you know that I love like reference materials. So I have a lot of, I guess you could call them encyclopedias of quotes, quibs, synonyms, antonyms, like thesauruses and all kinds of stuff that I love, like just sifting through. And I've got this huge like dictionary looking thing full of quotes, and I love looking stuff up for these archetypes. Well, not just these, but I don't know. I feel like it helps me to tap into someone that may have said this, tap into why they would have said this, or in what situation they were in, and how it kind of relates to me and where my thoughts have been on all of these archetypes, where they were at the time, and things like that. Forgot this one to put it. There we go. I know I'm doing a lot of gluing and stuff off camera, but you really don't need to see the logistics of it all. Oh. Maya Angelou. You have two hands, one for helping yourself and one for helping others. It's actually not the whole quote. That's why I got that ... right there. It says, as you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands, one for helping yourself and the other for helping others. I condensed it so that I could fit it here, but just love this quote. When I found it, I was like, man, this is perfect. Because, oh, like I said, there's something about hands. There's something about hands that remind me of protection and caring, hugs and giving someone something. Like when you gift them something, you're using your hands. And I used to have a pair of like hands that, like a dish that was going like this. Loved that thing because it's like, what could you have put in there that would symbolize its significance? Because in this little thing, this cup of hands, it's like a reverence to me. There's like a reverence in this pose, the ultimate caregiver pose. Here's this. Here's what I'm giving you to help you. Here's my love. They have a talent, the caregivers, for compassion, for being a saint, for being an altruist. Love your neighbor as yourself, but don't forget to care and love for yourself first. That way, when you do grow older and discover your two hands, you'll have learned a little bit about how to take care of yourself, and it will be easier to care for others because of that, in my opinion. So, again, this looks very non-messy. I know that. I've been trying to get a little bit more inspired as to what I kind of want this to end up being at the end of this thing. So sometimes, some months, I'll be a little bit more ambitious, and then others I'll want to be a little bit more sedate with my messiness. So I guess come back next month on the new moon and we'll discover another archetype together. Let me know your thoughts below. Much love, people.